Welcome back. Now for the news in detail. British overseas territories like the British Virgin Islands have been told to defend the future of their financial services industries by showing the likely negative fallouts for the economies of larger countries like the United States and the United Kingdom.
It may be vexing that you have to explain and defend your business model, but bear in mind that you have in this island one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. And you wind the clock back 30 years ago with fishing, farming, tourism, etc. It was quite a different story. The world wants to know why you are successful, why you facilitate 4% of FDI in the world. They're curious about this. And in my view, my principal message is it's incumbent on industry to explain to the world why their prosperity is dependent on the activity that you carry on here. This changes the climate for dialogue. When you get to people and you explain that they could damage their own economic interests by foolish policy that impairs your ability to facilitate trade, growth, jobs in their home jurisdiction, pensions growth, when they begin to understand that their policies may adversely impact on their domestic economy in the United Kingdom and the United States, that's a much more powerful agent than saying to them, don't do this, it's not fair to us.
Addressing the 5th BVI Business Outlook Conference held under the theme, Move Beyond Your Own Bubble at the Scrub Island Resort on January 14th this year, head of the International Private Banking and Financial Regulation Practice, Richard Hay, says the perception that financial centers are used to hide wealth is false. He cited investor confidence in the business climate of territories like the British Virgin Islands, among reasons for their high number of international business companies.
And the reality is, this is actually very wrong. The main use of BVI companies is actually in a lot of countries where it's tax neutral, they operate territorial systems. Asia and emerging countries are the biggest users of BVI companies. This illustrates why one might use a BVI company to invest in China. If you were going to build a toll road in China, the NGOs would say to me, Christian Aid, etc., why do you have to go through BVI? Why don't you just go directly into a Chinese company? Well, imagine your toll road, you want to get money from international investors, you conclude arrangements under Chinese law, and there's ultimately a dispute and your financier wants to get their money back, and they have to go to a Chinese court under Chinese law using a Chinese lawyer. Do they feel comfortable with the predictability of the result in that forum? Probably not. If they do that in BVI, where they have the access to the professional class and British laws, they feel comfortable that there will be a predictable outcome for the dispute. It facilitates global business. That's why people use BVI for international investment, is because they have confidence in the resolution of disputes here. And China, in a very deft move, in effect rents foreign institutions the confidence that the international investors have in British Virgin Islands and the other British territories in order to secure that international investment, because otherwise the international financier would not contribute the money into the Chinese court, because he knows that Chinese judge is not giving his money back if the toll road project's going to collapse, whatever his legal entitlement. If he does it here, they're comfortable that there will be a predictable outcome.
Financial services contributes some 60% to the BVI government's annual revenue. In his 2015 budget address, Premier Dr. Orlando Smith said the financial services sector remains resilient, but also noted a decrease in new incorporation figures. The BVI is ranked as the leading jurisdiction for the incorporation of companies, with some 460,000 registrations, according to the BVI Financial Services Commission. Richard Hay says the BVI's success in financial services as the leading center for international business companies is linked to its relationship with the United Kingdom. He says BVI could apply a staged implementation approach.
The United Kingdom's put pressure on BVI to make a public commitment to move towards a central register. You're asking yourselves, of course, what happens if we publish our client list. I think you got a sense of that last April when the ICIJ data leak splashed the names of your clients all over the press. In my view, this would not be a positive development to move in the direction of a public register of beneficial ownership. So what are your options here? Well, you could agree to do it. I think that's commercially quite challenging for you. You could push back on UK pressure. Now, one needs to be careful about this. It's a long game. You don't want to be confrontational. You want to be cooperative, but at the same time, you need to be sensitive to the commercial impact this would have on you. You could ask the United Kingdom to explain how its model will comply with FATF, and I've done that, and I can tell you their answer is not very convincing on this point. And the other thing you could do is to refine the design and execution of your current system. It's really a two-pronged strategy I would recommend. One is to say to the United Kingdom, we're not really sure you're in the vanguard because we don't think you're compliant with FATF, and here's why. But secondly, we understand the need to upgrade standards, and we're happy to migrate our model. And here's a few ideas that we have in mind for you. And I would stage implementation of those ideas because I guess you've noticed whenever you do something that Tax Justice Network or one of those agencies calls for, they never give you credit, right? They never pause and say, oh, this is great, you're welcome into the family of international cooperative jurisdictions. They bag that concession and they're immediately on to the next one. So the stage delivery is probably the way to do it. You know, you say, well, this is our plan, we're going to execute over a 2-year period, here's the milestones, this is where we get to at this point.
The Virgin Islands government has engaged the services of global management consultants McKinsey & Company to undertake a financial services management consultancy, which will help to chart a new direction in the financial services sector. The project team began work in August 2014 and is expected to advise on measures to better protect the international reputation of the territory, following consultations with several committees made up of public sector representatives, a wide cross-section of domestic private sector practitioners and other BVI international practitioners in Latin America, Europe, and Asia. At the end of a 3-part phased consultancy, the project team is required to develop a strategic framework and implementation plan to diversify the existing financial services model and build a new dynamic and innovative financial services model which will seek to create greater substance and value-added activities in the British Virgin Islands.